broader issue here is like what we were talking about, like for people like Jonathan Chait and a sort of like older class of, you know, Democratic or people who consider themselves liberal. What's really being brought out in this election is that they seem to think everything is fine, and that the people, mostly the young people that are really going in for Bernie and making this a very tight Democratic, primary, are essentially that there's something wrong with them for wanting more than the status quo, or that the idea to hope for a better future or to care about politics outside this very narrowly prescribed parameters is not only foolish but dangerous in a way. And that seems to me coloring a lot of the sort of like generational split in the Democratic Party right now.
And it's just so disgusting to read him from his position of absolute self-satisfaction at the top of this pinnacle of liberal progress, when his argument, incremental liberalism is as good as we're going to get. If the people who held that belief at every previous point in American history, if they had gotten their way, then all of these things that he takes credit for in terms of racial and gender equality and in terms of a more democratic polity and more economic justice, none of those things would have happened because they would have been because those people fought against it. Every single time that there was some sort, every single time in the history of American progressive movement, it was a force outside of mainstream liberalism pushing left that pushed things in the direction of genuine change. I mean, Jonathan Chait in during the Birmingham protests, he would be one of the moderate clerics who Martin Luther King wrote letters from a Birmingham jail to.
Also, Chait's big endorsement of liberalism is its principle of free speech. When he cries about the people who suppressed Donald Trump's right to free speech, he's talking about, the protesters in Chicago. When he made his name in 2002 and 2003 in the lead up and beginning of the Iraq War, the entire thing that he built his name and his entire career on was hippie punching, was tone policing people from the left who are protesting a war that this Henley shirt wearing fucking movie reviewer who has never even thrown a punch in his life was defending with his entire life and honor. He was suppressing the speech of people who were right while he was wrong, using his authority as the fucking New York Magazine theater critic.
Well, no, wasn't he with the New Republic at that time?
Oh, even better.
Yeah, he was one of Marty Peretz's proteges or whatever. And yeah, he was a huge hawk for the Iraq War, and his the sort of the contract that he got in that regard was spending many of his columns attacking the anti-war left and sort of setting the limits of what was considered decent or acceptable opinion, which of course was all the pro-war position. And now he regards this, now if you bring it up, if you just reply to anything he says with good point, Jonathan, but you supported the Iraq War, he gets
a nice ad hominem here.
Yeah. He thinks that's
I bid you good day, sir.
He thinks that's an ad hominem attack. And the funny thing is, if Hillary becomes president, or even worse, some fucking Republican gets in there and finds a way to, intervene in the Ukraine or Syria or something, I'm sure Jonathan Chait will find some way of supporting that again.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
There'll be
what he
contortions.
Does.
He'll definitely scratch his chin a lot, and he'll be tormented by it for a paragraph or two before he clears his throat and says, we might have to kill half the people in the Eastern Hemisphere.
Jonathan Chait, he hates the Bernie supporters, and he hates the campus people, and he hates the people who protested Trump in Chicago, who, by the way, Chait is another one of these guys who says that people denied Trump his freedom of speech because what really happened is that they called him on his bluff.
He bitched out. Everyone
saw he was a pussy and ran. And, a guy like Chait, who's been a fucking pussy his entire life, what party is he going to relate to here? But they hate these groups of people because they've been politically effective without the help of your Jonathan Chaits or Michelle Goldbergs. And this is the same fear that the never Trump conservatives have. They're really not afraid of any political outcome. They believe they will be fine in any set of political outcomes. What they're really afraid of is irrelevance. They're afraid of any political outcome that shows them that no one more than 50,000 people on Twitter and the few people in Washington, D.C. read them, and that they have no influence on the world, and no one gives a fuck about them. And if somebody shot Jonathan Chait in the back of the head tomorrow, it wouldn't even make the front page of New York Magazine where he writes. And that's their fear, that they're just complete fucking factotums, that you could write a Markov chain that could write Jonathan Chait's columns for him, that when he gets in arguments with people and links their tweets, that no one gets on his side, because who gives a fuck about Jonathan Chait? No one fucking likes him, or their ideas are influenced by him at all. And that's what scares them more than anything else in the world.